Hi, Rachel. How's it going?
It's going great.
Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today. So, just as a brief introduction for our listeners, Rachel Aaron is a science fiction and fantasy author of The Legend of Eli Monpress and the Paradox Trilogy, and she also wrote a little nonfiction book for writers called 2K to 10K, Writing Faster, Writing Better, and Writing More of What You Love. So our topic today is the writing software Scrivener. Now we'll get into the fiction writing process in a moment, but what's most relevant to our topic today is that little nonfiction book. So why don't you give me a little background on that? Why did you write it? What's it about?
Well, 2K to 10K is what I like to call my little book that could. It actually started as a blog post on my blog, and if you're interested, you can go to my blog. It's at rachelaaron.net. You just click on the blog tab, and I have a little sidebar with Rachel's greatest hits, and it's the number one greatest hit. And but it was a blog post about how I took my daily writing process from 2,000 words a day to 10,000 words a day without increasing the amount of time I spent writing. And long story short, I figured out how to get just much more efficient with my writing time because I only had so many hours in the day to write, and I had a deadline, and I had to make it. So it was a sink or swim moment, and I learned how to butterfly basically.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to basically what happened was I was way behind on a deadline, and I figured out a new way of increasing my word count. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And so I was at Con Carolinas in like 2011 or something like that. And I just happened to mention to a room full of people that I had done this, that I had recently gone from writing 2,000 words a day to 10,000 words a day. And the whole room flips out. I was like a tiny person on that panel, and I got all the questions. And my friend John Hartness, who is a really awesome and funny guy, and also a writer who writes funny books, he suggested you should write an ebook and self-publish. And at the time, I mean, I was very New York published, and I was like, oh, I don't want to self-publish. Oh, I can't do all that stuff. Oh, I'm scared. And then I just kept getting requests, and my blog posts just kept going viral. And I'm finally like, fine, I'll write the ebook. And so I took the blog post and I greatly expanded it because I figured out a lot more about the process. And I had also started using Scrivener, which makes things awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But I started doing the book, and it kind of grew out of that blog post, and it became this very short kind of. I'm a professional writer. I write for a living. Here's how I do things. Here's how I write fast. Here's how I solve problems, and that's the whole book. And for those of you wondering how I went from 2K to 10K, I invite you to go read the blog post because it would take way too long to explain it here. But it's a very simple process, and it seems to work for everyone. Like, I have had, because people email me all the time saying, Rachel, you changed my life. And I don't really know what to say to that because it's kind of head slappingly stupid. Like, the number one tenet of the process is to know what you're writing before you write it. Like, take a moment and figure out what you're doing. This is like some ninth grade 5-paragraph essay stuff, you know?
Totally.
But
Totally.
anyway.
That's really interesting to me how it grew from like a blog post into a book. Do you find that your fiction stories do that too?
No, actually, and I get asked this a lot, but nonfiction and fiction writing for me are two very different animals. I
Totally.
find nonfiction writing to be much more difficult, and it drains my energy a lot more. Fiction
Mm,
writing makes me excited, and I can write it forever.
right.
Like, and when I finish writing 10,000 words, I mean, I feel like I can fly. I feel like I can take on the world. It's this amazing feeling when you get really going on a story.
That's
But I mean,
awesome.
nonfic, I'm so slow. I'll spend all day writing like a 5,000 word blog post will take me the entire day, and it just takes it all out of me. But it's just a difference in people. I know there are lots of people who just find a lot of joy in nonfiction, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just not really my calling. Which is why I am so very happy that people do enjoy the nonfiction I wrote because it was a subject I was very passionate about.
Absolutely. So, what edition are you currently in with 2K to 10K? Because you said that Scrivener wasn't like you had kind of discovered Scrivener in the middle of your career, not necessarily at the beginning. So, when you first came up with this concept of going from writing 2,000 words a day to 10,000 words a day, was Scrivener already an integral part of it?
I know it was not yet.
Mm.
I was still writing in Word back then because apparently I lived in the Stone Age, and it was awful. It was terrible. To all the writers writing in Word, stop. It is the worst program. It would automatically format everything all the time. Like, I would turn stuff into my editor, and she'd get it all jumbled, and I was just like, I hate you, Word. I hate you.
Yeah.
And I moved to Scrivener, and life has been like there were a few things I had to figure out, and because Scrivener is one of those programs where if you want to be a power user,
Mm-hmm.
it's got everything you could ever want. But if you're like me, if you're one of those people who like gets a digital camera and you're like, I just wanted to push the freaking button and take the goddamn picture, that's how I use Scrivener. I only use like a handful of the tools, but it's amazing. And I got the trial version and I bought it the same day, and I've used it forever. And I sing their praises whenever possible. But anyway, to actually answer your question, at the time I figured this out, I had actually just discovered Scrivener, but the book I was writing was in Word.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still writing in Word because it was like a 170,000 word book, and I wasn't moving it.
Oh, wow.
It was big. This is a very big novel. This is my fourth Eli novel of a 5-book series.
Okay.
So,
Fourth Eli novel.
but I started the 5th book with my process and Scrivener, and that was like writing candy right there. It was smooth. I could move all the chapters around.
That's awesome.
I don't understand why every writing program doesn't have a make a block, move it around feature.
Right. So tell us. So you started using Scrivener, your fourth Eli Monpress novel.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that. What was it like a light bulb moment, or was it like a slow realization about?
No, with me, I saw it. I can't even remember where I saw it. I think I just saw it like some writer mentioned it. Hey, you should try Scrivener. I think on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, writing program software, that's probably a scam, but I'll take a look.
Right.
And I go click it, and I'm like, actually, that looks really awesome, and like everything I need. And I just finished telling my husband like this giant rant about how much I hated Word.
Mm.
And because it's just a big amorphous blob that your book falls into. It's like a big bag,
Mm-hmm.
and everything's just sitting in there. And I couldn't even track how many words I was writing in a chapter, so I used to like make notes at the bottom of my manuscript. I just keep a running tally of my words so that I know when I'd hit my words for the day.
Mm-hmm.
I just take whatever number I had and subtract that from the total word count.
Right.
And that's like I had to do the math myself. How stupid is that?
Yeah.
So I just gotten done complaining, and I saw this program, and I'm like, well, it's got a free trial, so I'll try it. And I used that 30-day free trial like it was my new best friend. It was like I was every day. I loved it. It just immediately clicked. I had to figure out a few things. So I got in it when they just released the Windows version. I think that's actually how I heard about it, because I'm a Windows user.
Right.
And so I'd heard Mac writers talking about it, but I'm like, oh, whatever. Y'all are on Mac. Different universe, doesn't apply. But once the PC version came out, and it was a little buggy at first,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like the first release.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. It was just the ability to create a chapter, write things in the chapter, and then go, oh, wait, this chapter should go before this other chapter. And I just click and drag. Was like the best thing that had ever happened in my life. And I'm not even making that up.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way.
Revolutionary moment.
Absolutely. It's life-changing once you realize you can do that.
Yeah, and for the listeners, I am not in any way being paid by Scrivener. This is
Right.
pure love that was earned by virtue of having an awesome product that is priced competitively. Because it only costs $40.
Yeah, it's 49, I think.
Which
or
is
something
nothing.
Like that.
I mean, you spend that much eating like a nice dinner out for two. If you eat at a cheap place.
On the low end, right? On the low end, yes. That's right.
If you're a big spender at like, go to Red Lobster, but only order off the value menu.
Right. So eat PB&J one night, and you can afford it. So fantastic. So how many years have you been writing professionally?
Oh, well, let's see. I quit my job in 2009, so I guess that would count. That's also when I got my book deal. My first books came out in 2010, so it'd be 6 years now.
Okay.
But I've been treating my writing like a full-time career since 2004. Been writing about every day. So it took me about 5 years.
Okay, so 5 years to get a book deal, and then the fourth Eli Monpress novel what year was that?
I think it was 2011, maybe, the end of 2011.
So almost 7 years you were writing in Word before you came to Scrivener. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was actually no. I take it back. I think I started Scrivener early 2011, so it's more. I honestly cannot remember, but it was a long time. Mm-hmm. Too long.
And now you dread going back to Word, so I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, well, I wrote in Word, and then I wrote in OpenOffice,
Mm.
which is like Word, but a little buggier, but less evil.
Right.
So, like Word, but less evil, but a little buggier. And I love OpenOffice, actually, and I still use it for, like, when I have to just open a document or write a document or whatever. Because
Hmm.
Scrivener is definitely for writing. Like, I don't use it for other things. Though, funny story, I actually got my husband addicted to Scrivener as well, and because he makes role playing games. That's like what he likes to do, and I've used it. He uses it to organize his campaigns. So,
Wow,
which I
that's
think is really
amazing.
cool because you can just make little sections by game, like
Yeah.
game one, game two, and you can use it to keep track of the overall plot and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's really interesting. I've been talking to
for
people
tabletop role
about
playing.
right, right. So I've been talking to people about different uses for Scrivener, and some people have said, apart from writing fiction and nonfiction, maybe blogs. But I've been having trouble finding other good uses for it. One thing that's been mentioned is as a project management tool, but in like actually writing a game is also a really great use because then it's a writing tool and a management tool, right?
Yeah, well, basically, because you got to compile the source books and everything, and
Right.
that's like nonfiction writing,
Yeah.
so it just goes in. Scrivener doesn't do really the drag and drop like pictures and tables as well as Word,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean that's kind of a minor complaint
Sure.
in terms of it. But he mostly uses it as a game master to organize his, or he has used it to organize his campaigns. He uses a lot of other stuff too. He's
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of those guys who will like try a system and then immediately jump to another system. He's always experimenting with stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
But
Um,
he's used it and it was really cool.
yeah. So it sounds like you've done a lot of experimentation too with your writing process.
I am always looking for ways to get better.
So you mentioned to me earlier that you had a background as a programmer. So I'd be
Mhm.
interested to hear how your process as a programmer kind of translated to your process as a writer.
Yeah, well, I should clarify that I was a CSS programmer, which is definitely not a hardcore programmer.
Sure.
Before anyone comes and tries to like test my cred,
Okay. But
but
you built websites.
yeah, I built websites, and I was a very, very good CSS programmer, if I do say so myself. And I actually really loved my career. I was very successful. I worked at a great company. I built a lot of websites that are still running and have freaking flawless CSS. And this was back when we had to support IE6, so that's saying something. IE6 was awful, but I was very CSS really appealed to what I call the clockmaker in me. I really love making very organized, very tightly structured systems where everything just clicks together, and that makes me very happy, kind of
Hmm.
on a fundamental level.
Right.
And I found that a lot of the kind of the management techniques, if I can call them that, like ways of thinking about things and of managing myself, that I learned doing CSS at a very creative and busy design company
Hmm.
where I was like the least artistic person there because I was the person doing all the numbers. And I also did graphic design there, but I was like the baby graphic designer
Sure.
who like did like the grunt work of designing things, and whereas the really artistic people did all like the really fun stuff.
Yeah.
But the real thing that I found in any sort of programming or writing is you're designing a system. In a book, you have a plot, and what a plot is it's basically how these people get from point A to point B and the changes they go through. And there's a million different ways of thinking about plots, but I like to think about mine as a system. We have a problem. We have characters. We have all these different things that are all going on at the same time, and somehow they all have to make sense.
Hmm.
They all have to happen together, and
Hmm.
they all have to happen in a way that is interesting. And that's a pretty big challenge because you can't just have people going from point A to point B with no reasons and no complications. You've got to constantly be bucking the system. And so one of the things I try to do is I try to always be aware of the flow of my writing. Where is the tension? Where is the imperatives to turn the page? Where is that coming from? Who knows what at what point? What like I actually in 2K Tenke I talk about my birds have a my stones have a 2 bird minimum. If I can't do at
Hmm.
least 2 things in a scene, I don't bother with it
Uh,
because I don't have ain't no one got time for that.
sure. Sure.
And so I'm constantly looking for ways to put more into my scenes, to
Hmm.
make them do more in the book. I mean, develop this character and also reveal something about the world and build tension for the scene that's coming later. And I layer and layer and layer. And with all those layers of complexity, you have to have some sort of way of thinking about things.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just get confused and you just get lost. And so organization becomes very important, very heavy plotting. I use Scrivener a lot for that. I have these huge plot lists that I'm constantly referring to. And Scrivener actually has a mode where you can look at 2 documents at once on the same screen, which is amazing because I just have like a little document of, I call it my scene diagram, where I just have like a list of where every scene is and a basic 1-sentence description of what's happening in that scene. And I use the scene diagram when I'm looking at my novel to kind of remind me of where I am and what's going to happen next. This is especially in editing, actually.
Is your scene diagram just in a text file, or do you use the note cards in Scrivener?
I just actually just make a new page in Scrivener in the little bottom of the resources part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just have a section just called editing, which is where I kind of throw, like when I'm writing a novel and I'm going to have to change something back in chapter 5.
Right.
I just go to the editing, I just dump it in there like a bucket. And then when it comes time to actually edit, I pull up that list that I made and I go through it. And I make another page that's called my scene map, and I note all the changes that are going to have to happen and where they're going to have to happen. Mm-hmm. And so just being able to look at 2 things at once, to move stuff around, to have multiple documents tied to one document, master document.
Right.
Because I have like my book, and then within the book I have chapters, I have editorial notes, I have ideas for book 3 or whatever, the next book in the series, things that are going to need to change. I also keep and if you've read 2K to 10K, hi. If you're someone who's read 2K to 10K, thank you for listening to this. And you'll know that I like to keep a spreadsheet of my writing. Like I just like to record where I wrote, how much time I spent writing, and how much I got. So I like to keep a track of my numbers because I've learned over years of writing that I have kind of a happy writing pace. Like when the story's going well, I tend to write about 1,000 words an hour. If the story is not going well, it drops below that. And if the story's going really well, it goes above that. So it's kind of a good, if I feel like I really had trouble with the scene and I'm not happy with it, I can go back and look at my writing speeds. It's just sort of another indicator for is this actually working? Because when the writing is working, it should be going quickly. If you're really in love with the scene and if it's a good idea, it will flow quickly. But if it's like pulling teeth, if you're really struggling to write, then there's probably something wrong with the scene you're trying to write. Like something is wrong. That's your subconscious putting on the brakes.
Yeah.
That's the way I use it.
It's a symptom of the problem rather than the problem itself, right?
Exactly. Like people, I hear authors, and my heart goes out to these people. I hear these authors, new and established authors actually, just talking about, I hate writing. I hate writing, but I love having written. Mm-hmm. You know, people who are like, it's pain, it's torture, it's blood on the page. Woe is my life. And I'm like, you poor dears, that's not what writing is like. Writing is amazing.
Yeah.
The process of writing should be something you look forward to every day. It's like you get to go and play pretend.
Right. I always wonder if those people are like, if they enjoy being martyrs more, or if they just are genuinely not understanding the difference between, easy writing and hard writing.
I think it's kind of 2 different problems running into each other. Because on the one hand, you have this culture in writing of if you're not suffering, you're not a real writer.
Right.
And
starving artist.
You have a lot of people kind of playing that up for the romanticism of it. And I mean, if that's the role playing you like to do, I'm not going to judge, totally. But if you're legitimately unhappy with your writing and you don't understand why would anyone do this,
right?
If your dream of being a writer is to have a book published, if that's the reason you're writing, then you might need to re-examine your reasons for writing, because let me tell you, you spend a lot more time actually writing than you do in the afterglow of publication.
Absolutely.
It's 99.999% writing.
Right. If you don't actually enjoy. Right. Yeah. Right. If writing is most of your day and you don't enjoy that part, you're probably not a good writer.
Why are you writing? Why are you doing this? There's so many better ways to make a living.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the scene map and the scene diagrams that you mentioned earlier, because these are, they're homemade tools, right? It's not something that comes with Scrivener. And understanding that this might be, an audio and obviously video, and not necessarily something that people can look at and reference. Can you kind of describe the structure of what a scene map or a scene diagram looks like?
Absolutely. It's very, very simple. I get a new blank page. I hit the bullet point button, and I just start
Nice.
making a bulleted list
Okay.
of, okay, scene one, the novel opens. What happens? And it's literally just villain shows up,
Mm-hmm.
kidnaps hero. It's like a one sentence because the scene map is not there for someone else. It's there to remind you what happens in that scene and what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And the process of boiling that scene down to a single sentence can, if you're having trouble focusing,
Mm-hmm.
can really help you discover what's important about that scene. And I just do that for every scene in my book. And I break them up by chapter just for because looking at a giant bulleted list is really hard. But I break them
Mm-hmm.
up by chapter. I also actually in my method, I also I note how long each chapter is beside the chapter. So it'll say like chapter 1, 6,000 words, and have like 3 bullet points below it, and each bullet point is a scene. So there are 3 scenes in chapter 1,
Okay.
and the scene will have a one sentence description, like my Prince's Pawn books. Devi gets job on Glorious Fool would
Mm-hmm.
be a one. That's what happened. And I also, the reason I do the word counts beside every chapter is because I like all my chapters to be about the same length. And the reason for that is because if you have one chapter that's very, very long and one chapter that's very, very short, the long chapter is going to feel like it's dragging.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to feel slow. Even if it's exactly as exciting as everything else that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
people just notice the chapter is really long.
Mm-hmm.
And readers notice these things. And so I like to kind of present them with I like to stay within a 2,000 word buffer, which is
Okay.
pretty generous.
Yeah.
I don't do it to the word, but like for example, my comfort zone is between 6 and 8,000 word chapters. That's which is very big
Mm-hmm.
for some people, but that's the chapter size I like.
That's really interesting. And so you use this to kind of structure your novel. Like, so each chapter is six to
Exactly.
8,000 words. I have a little bit of a buffer.
And it goes over and it goes under sometimes, but I generally try to keep them all together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a personal preference thing. I mean, I've read books that where the chapters were each 2,000 words,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's more like a scene. But what do I know? Every
Right.
different strokes for different folks. Everyone does it differently.
Sure.
And but the scene map, once I do is I write this whole thing out, and I actually do a scene map at 2 points in my writing process. I do it at the beginning of the book when I'm plotting.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene map is more like a scenes I hope to write.
Right.
And it changes a lot during the actual writing. And then I redo it at the end of the book when it's time to start editing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the scene map is literally a map. It is what I use when I edit, because I'm like, I need to change what character A said to character B after they kiss. Well, okay, where was the kiss? I go and I look it up. Oh, it was in chapter 5. Because,
Mm-hmm.
you forget what chapter you put stuff in when you've been working on a book for 4 or 5 months.
And when it's several thousand words or
Yeah,
several 100,000 words.
I write large books. My books tend to be between 120 and 150,000 words. That's a
Wow.
big book. So
Yeah, it's a lot to keep
you
track
gotta
of.
have a map. Also, I've found that kind of the more different angles you can find to think about your work,
Mm-hmm.
like the more different ways you can find, at least for me, because I'm someone who really loves lists. And
Mm-hmm.
I fully recognize that there are writers who are not like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone writes their own way. You'll never find 2 writers who write exactly the same way.
Totally.
But with me, I find that I come up with a lot of really great ideas while I'm making the scene map. Because I think, oh man, this scene would be so much better over here. It's like breaking it into Legos, and then you can just rearrange the Legos
Mm-hmm.
as you like. I find that very empowering, and it gets me really excited about the book and about editing the book.
Cool. So in addition to these homemade tools, how do you use the features in Scrivener to kind of help you along? Do you use like
Well,
status or um, labels or anything like that?
I started to do that, but honestly, I'm really lazy, and just doing it all on a list was just easier for me.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I did
Okay.
it because I'm lazy. And always give a job to a lazy person. They'll find the efficient way to do it.
It's true.
But what I do is I love Scrivener's ability to just show me at a glance how many words are in a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll just click on my manuscript and I'll just say this many words per chapter, and I'm just like, okay, bam, 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 done. It also, again, because I like my chapters all be the same length, it shows me where kind of the big piggy chapters are.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the big chapter? It needs to be. Where's the overgrown bush that needs to be trimmed down?
Mm.
That kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. So, what about the planning process? Like when you're first doing your first scene map, you just do it in a bullet point list. You don't have any like note cards, or do you do it on paper? Do you take it out of Scrivener?
I actually, when I first do my very initial planning, I like to do it longhand just because I think better in longhand.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's time to like get down to brass tacks, I always start up with Scrivener. I actually made myself a template, which
Nice.
is the form I call it the Rachel Aaron novel template, and it's
Brilliant.
the brilliant. I know, right? And but it's just basically how I like my books, and I have a title page where I keep track of when I started the book. It's basically just sort of a identification page for the book. So it's when I started the book, when I'm anticipating finishing the book, how long I think it'll be, what series it's in. I also do versioning on my novels because a
Nice.
lot of
Yes.
times I will decide, oh, I need to change this, but I don't want to rewrite it. I don't want to get confused. So I'll just save an old version of the book
Mm-hmm.
as like version 1, and then I'll do version 2,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go back. So instead of like cutting and moving stuff down in Scrivener, because I think that makes my file look very messy, I just version it. And that's a personal preference. Scrivener actually is great about, oh, well, I'll just duplicate these 5 chapters,
Mm-hmm.
put them all in a folder, and move them down to, because I always keep, one of the things I do is I keep like a cuts folder
Yeah.
down in my resource section. And anything that I decide I don't like and is going to go, I just copy paste it down into cuts. So I never lose it.
Mm-hmm.
I never throw it away. It's always down there in case I need it, which makes it a lot easier to cut words. But no, I start off with the scene map, and I use the resources section. I use that like crazy. I make little folders for characters and plot and the world, and like anything that's world building or detail or like pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I put them in there. So like I have a folder that's basically like, here is information about your world. Like I just actually just last July released a self-published fantasy novel called Nice Dragons Finish Last, which has been very, very well received. And I'm working on the second book. I just finished it and I'm about to release it.
Oh, nice.
Once I get it all nice and cleaned up. So I'm very excited about that. But in the book, the characters are all dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are like 3,000 years old, and my main character is 24. So I have to keep track of how old each dragon is, because I'll have them make references to things that happened. I'm like, wait, were they alive when that happened? I don't know. Would they remember Genghis Khan? I don't know. I have to look it up. So I one of the things I do is I have a section that's just called dragons. And in there I have a whole table of all my dragons and how old they all are and their relative ages to each other. And Scrivener is great for keeping because that's just a useful thing that I have to check every now and then because I forget.
Yeah.
And so instead of going into a billion different documents, I just click down to my dragons folder and look it up.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that you can't use a dragons folder on every other novel. Like these things that you're adding to the resource folder, they're very unique to whatever book you happen to be working on.
Oh, yeah, and that's one of the things I constantly, because people are like, oh, what's your writing process?
Right.
And I'm like, it depends on the book.
Yep.
Some books just fall out, perfectly made. And other books take a lot of making tools and finding different ways to use them. And that is one of the things, you hit a nail on the head, that's one of the things I love about Scrivener is I can just make a folder.
Mm-hmm.
I can name it anything. Yeah. I can throw as many pages or pictures or links to other things as I want under there and just keep track of it all, because if you have to, because I always try, I write with Freedom on, which is a program that keeps my internet down.
Yeah.
And so if I have world building materials, they need to be in Scrivener because I can't go out and get them, because if I do, I'll end up, browsing Reddit for like 5 hours.
I've never done that.
I know that's not productive to writing. Anyone who's done that, don't do that. So, but I have to turn the internet off or I won't get anything done.
Sure.
And even no matter how much I love my novel, sometimes things are hard. You just, I'll just go check this real fast 5 hours later,
Yeah.
And, but so anyway, so that's sort of one of the things I find very nice is Scrivener allows me to keep my, basically my workspace of the novel, all of the world building and the, documentation I make for myself, like character A, what color are his eyes? I don't remember. I haven't described them in 80,000 words.
Yeah.
I have to go look it up.
Right.
All the stuff that you just need to check, I just make a little pile and I can just go check it. It's wonderful.
So what do you think are the default resources that you would include in a normal fiction novel? So we're talking about creative writing here. So, I mean, on my list, are character sketches and setting sketches. Those are the two things I always start with. But beyond that, I mean, are there other things you like to have?
Oh, yeah. Well, my Scrivener template, my Rachel Aaron novel template, starts with a title page, a page already done chapter 1. But I really should change it to prologue because like every book I've ever written has had a prologue. So starting with chapter 1 is kind of ridiculous. But well, okay, there was one book I wrote that didn't have a prologue, but that didn't count. So you've got chapter 1, and then I have the resources section. In the resources section, I always have plot, characters, world, and then I have cuts, a folder called edits,
Okay.
and a individual page called worksheet, which is where I keep track of all my writing times and numbers.
Mm.
And because for every book I write, I'm going to have plot, I'm going to have characters, I'm going to have a world,
Yep.
I'm going to cut stuff out of it, and I'm going to have edits. And then I just sort of change these as I go. And the edits folder is actually especially useful because one of my biggest problems as a writer, personal problems, is that I would get caught up in editing things. Like, I would remember something I had to do, and I would go back, and then the next thing I knew, I'd spent 5 hours of what should have been writing time, rewriting, like, 5 paragraphs in chapter 2, which is a ridiculous misuse of time. I don't even need that stuff right now. It's probably all going to change by the time I get to the end of the book.
Sure.
But I can't let it go. I just get obsessive, but I have to fix this problem. And so I have an edits folder, which is where I can just say, in chapter 2, do this. I just describe what I'm going to do. And that that mentally checks it off my list so I can stop obsessing about it and move on to what I'm actually supposed to be doing, which is writing more words.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this very much helps me with my productivity and also just sort of my peace of mind, because there's nothing more frustrating than, like, I'm just going to change something real fast, and then it's this giant mess, and you're just like, I'm never going to finish this, and I've wasted my whole day, and I have nothing to share for it.
And on the other hand, if you don't get it out of your head, it's just going to sit there and steep.
It's just fester.
Yeah,
it's gonna fester.
Totally.
It's going to bother you.
Right.
So I try to do that. I basically say, this is your edits area. You can write as much as you want here about what needs to be done. It's not actually writing. You're leaving yourself a note. And another thing I want to say that I love about Scrivener is my environment as a writer. Like, if you were to take my Scrivener and look at it, it would make no sense because all the notes are out of context. But I understand them because I left them and I know what's going on. And it's very nice. I feel like it's my workspace because I write in a chair. I don't write. I have like a Lazy Boy recliner, but like an off-brand, so it's kind of like this cheap Lazy Boy, but it's awesome and I love it. And I write in the chair specifically because I don't like writing at a desk. Because I fiddle with things all the time.
Yeah.
And I have to focus myself because only at the beginning of writing, I always kind of compare writing to diving into water. Like, you've got to get going and you've got to make the leap and you got to hit the water, and for me, it takes about 30 minutes to actually get down to kind of the good writing level. Yeah. And I got to get into the zone, and during that 30 minutes, I'm very vulnerable to being distracted or someone interrupting my flow, and this doesn't happen all the time, but generally speaking, this is kind of my habit, and so I've developed a lot of techniques to keep me from being bad, because you got to know yourself as a writer. Because you work for yourself. You work most of the time, you work all alone. And you have to get very good at figuring out where you mess up and then compensating for that and figuring out ways around it. You can't beat yourself up over it. You just got to accept that I have this issue. Okay, what can I do to solve it? And that's why I write with no internet. That's why I write from a chair, so I don't get distracted by fiddling with things. Also, I don't, during writing time, I'm not allowed to clean. One of the things I do is I'd be like, oh, that dish needs to be put up. And then I go do the dishes. I'm like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be writing.
Right. A lot of this sounds very familiar to me.
I bet it sounds familiar to a lot of writers. And you've just got to learn to identify that. And that's, I think, one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn as a professional writer, which has nothing to do with craft and everything to do with being a responsible manager of yourself. And one of my rules is if I wouldn't do it at work, I don't do it when I'm writing. Like, I wouldn't take a 5-hour break from my office job to play Minecraft.
Right.
I don't do that during my writing day. And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of self-discipline. But every day I ask myself, are you serious about this? This is your great dream. Do you have what it takes to say no to distractions and to do it? And the answer is an enthusiastic yes, because I love my job and I want to do it. And I, even though it can be very, very difficult and pretty depressing, especially when you suddenly realize that your book is broken, you're going to have to rewrite 50,000 words, which happens to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Every writer at every stage of their career can go through a bad book. The book I just finished, it was a very, very difficult story. I just couldn't get it right. And it was very hard. And you just have to develop professional discipline and the good good habits and coping mechanisms to get through the difficult times. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you end up being one of those writers who hits the book they can't defeat and then never writes again.
Yeah.
And I've known several writers in my professional career who are very talented, who just sort of had their brush with professional writing and then hit a book they couldn't beat, and they couldn't finish. And it was due, and they couldn't finish it, and they just stopped.
Wow.
And that's the saddest thing I can imagine. I mean, you made it, you got there, and then you just couldn't do it. And it really does come down to being a professional writer, and that goes way beyond, being an aspiring writer. And everyone says, "Oh, be professional." No, you have to be professional the whole way.
Yeah. The
whole way through your career, because again, it's just you. And Scrivener, going back to our topic of choice, Scrivener is one of the programs that I use to help me be more professional, mm-hmm. because it lets me do what I need to do to get my writing done. And it is a writer's toolbox. It has the stuff that I need, and I love it to pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, just, to be honest, I read 2K to 10K a couple times, and I think one of my favorite parts about it is that you kind of set out, in a way, these guidelines for being a professional writer. Like, know what you write before you're going to write it. That's something an amateur would never do. They would never just go write it without knowing what they were going to put down on the page, right? So it's like a more professional attitude. And I like that because it's grounded in, like, experience and not, this is what you write. Why don't you just, you know what I mean?
Well, thank you very much. And I try to kind of my blog is like the blog of a working writer. Mm-hmm. And that's how I like to think about myself and how I try to phrase, because anything I do that's like how to do X, how to do Y on my blog, any writing advice I give is always caged with, this is not how to be a special artistic snowflake. Mm-hmm. This is about how to make a living doing what you love, because that's what we're in this for. Well, I mean, I assume that's if you're not in this to make a living, that's perfectly fine. Right. But if you want to be a professional writer, if you want to write full time, mm-hmm. There are certain realities of the business that you have to learn how to work around and how to deal with, like deadlines. Right. I worked. I was a New York published author since 2010. This new book is my first self-published book. So I've worked with both pretty big New York houses and for myself. And the deadlines do not change. Right. You have to get the book done. I'm actually dreadfully late, and I've done everything on my current book, and I've done everything I can to get around that. But I mean, you can't rush good ideas. The idea I had was bad, and it didn't work. And I had to come up with a better idea. Right. And you can't just invent those out of thin air. So I tried a whole bunch of ideas that all turned out to be bad. Now I finally found the good one. But, that's the thing is it's like, you've got the deadline. You can't just stop because you don't know what to do. You can't just make excuses. You've got to keep banging your head on the wall sometimes if that's what it takes. And it's that commitment to yourself and your art and your work on a professional level, because a lot of people can get very artistic about their writing, and I say that kind of in a weird way, but they can get very much, my muse isn't talking to me, mm-hmm. or I have to, I don't know what I'm doing, I have to just wait for it to come to me. No, you can't do that.
It's too mystical, right? Right.
Well, you're waiting for someone to hand you a book, and that's not how this works. Mm-hmm. If you're having a creative slump, get out and read some books. Watch a cool TV show. Go see an awesome movie. Play a cool game. Do something to get you outside your own head and thinking creatively again. You know, if you're having trouble on a book, don't just say, oh, woe is me. Figure out why. Why is the book broken? Think about it critically.
Yeah.
And because writing is a profession. It's not, or at least if you're doing it professionally, it's a profession. It's not something that we do for fun when the mood strikes us. That's not how I pay my mortgage. So.
True say. Cool. So I think we've kind of got through a lot of like the writing process, but there was one thing in particular you mentioned in your book that I wanted to touch on, and that was the story timelines that you use. I'm really interested to see whether you use Scrivener or if you use an alternate tool for them.
I use Scrivener, and I actually do them exactly like I do my scene plots. I love a bulleted list. I'm a big fan of a bulleted list, and
If it works.
I start Saturday, and I just like bullet one, you know, and I just list things in chronological order. Sometimes I do times, like if the book is the book I just wrote takes place over 3 days. So for that, I mean, I broke it down to hours.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost like 24, you know, watching the clock tick down. But other books, you know, take place over much longer timelines. I don't worry about hours. Then I just track by days. But really, the point of I make a timeline for all of my books, and I again, like the scene map, I make it before I start. So it's kind of an aspirational timeline, and I make it after I finish. And to be clear, this is a timeline of events in the book, not my timeline for writing the book, which I also make actually, because I know how many words I write per day, so I can kind of figure out about how much time it's going to take me to write a book.
Totally.
Which is awesome. But anyway, so I like to make timelines of what happens in books, because a lot of times you can solve a lot of plot problems in advance by just figuring out where everyone is at given times in the story and what they're doing and what they know. This is a very key point, especially if you have very tightly woven plots. You have to know who knows what when, what key plot information is available to what characters, and then do other characters know what those characters know? Because it can create a lot of tension without you having to do anything. If, say, the reader knows that character A and character B both know the same piece of information, but they don't know that each other knows, and so they're dancing around it, and that's some beautiful tension. And you didn't have to do anything except tell the reader they know.
Right. Yeah. And withhold information from each other. Right.
Exactly. And I'm constantly, because tension is one of your most important tools as a writer. That constant and tension in writing is what makes a reader turn the page. It's the need to know, and it can start with something as simple as a mystery, like. In my Devi novels, I start off with, my Devi, my main character, it's my sci-fi series, she wants a job, and she's offered a job on a trade ship where their security teams are constantly killed. And it's so dangerous that 1 year on this ship is worth 5 years anywhere else. And that's instantly a mystery. You're like, why is that? What are they doing? Because it's a normal trade ship. What is going on? And that's the mystery I open the book with. What's going on? Why is this? And so that creates tension. And then I have Devi meet the captain, and it's very clear he's not what he seems. So the plot thickens, the tension gets stronger.
Right.
And I use my timeline in a lot of ways to also kind of keep track of the tension. Because all of my books have some sort of a ticking clock, some sort of a something that's going to happen. And often the villain is the one moving toward the thing that's going to happen. And they are not getting the majority of the scene. So tracking where the villain is in the timeline can really help you create tension, because what are they doing while you're not looking?
Yeah. You always wonder what the villain's doing when he's off screen, right?
Yeah. It's like in Final Fantasy VII, where you basically follow Sephiroth. Like, you never actually see him do anything.
See him.
You're just following him forever.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be in his game. His game is like apparently where stuff's going on.
Yeah. I love the story in that game, for what it's worth. 7, 8, 9, they're just so well written. Like, the stories are beautiful.
I was the biggest fan of 6 and 10. 10 was the very first video game I ever played. Like, my parents didn't believe in video games, and so I didn't play them until college. And I still didn't really know what to do with them. And then one day, my boyfriend, who's now my husband, was like, "Oh, well, why don't you play this game? I think you'd like it."
Nice.
And then like an entire summer goes by where I like don't see the light of day.
Yeah.
So 10 I have a very special place in my heart for, but 6 was amazing. I love 6 so much. Kefka forever.
Yes, they're so good. All right, so do you use, are there any other features in Scrivener that we didn't cover that you use a lot?
I have a feature I'd like to complain about in case Scrivener is listening. Which
Sure.
is Scrivener's find and replace feature is balls. It is awful. I need a way, if I change a character's name, I need a way to search like the whole manuscript,
Yeah.
change it everywhere intelligently.
Yes.
Like that is one place Word kicks Scrivener's butt. Word is an amazing find replace. So what I do actually is I export Scrivener to Word when I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And there I make all my changes. But it's so obnoxious. The find replace feature is awful. But everything else is great. So just get it right the first time.
Yeah. Cool. I wonder if it's different in the Windows version. So they're not fully... They don't have full feature parity across the two versions yet, so I'm not certain how the find replace feature is different on Windows or Mac. But I know that one of the things they're trying to do with Scrivener 3, and this is just from my research, they're trying to give feature parity to the two different versions. So maybe it's bound to improve.
That would be amazing, because another problem I have is I search for help on Scrivener topics.
Yeah.
And I get the Mac version, and it's not the same. And
all the time.
Oh.
Are there other things that you wish that the Windows version has that it does not have?
No, that's the main. That's the main feature, is the find replace. Again, as I say, I like to think of myself as I'm kind of the grandma Scrivener user, the person who uses like 1% of what they can use. But that just goes to show what a great program Scrivener is, because because so many people I talk to, like, oh, I don't know, seems like it has a lot of features. And I'm like, you don't have to use them.
Right, they're there.
You can use it as a word processing program that breaks your chapters up into chapters that you can click and drag. I mean, that is worth $40, that one feature.
Yeah.
That is worth all of it to me.
That's so true.
And they also, if you're a fantasy writer like myself, the ability to add words to Scrivener's dictionary is awesome, because I'll write 5 books in the same series, and I'll keep the same ridiculous spellings for 5 books, and Scrivener just remembers everything that I put in between novels.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, like, I'll start a brand new Scrivener file for a sequel, and it already remembers everyone's name, and I don't get the red wiggly lines of "you messed up." Right,
totally. Do you use Scrivener for anything else?
Well, I wrote 2K to 10K on Scrivener, so I use it for all my nonfiction.
Okay.
When I ran a game, I used it for my own game notes. I'm showing exactly how nerdy I am. But we just talked about Final Fantasy VII, so
it's all right.
It's already out there now.
It's true. It's no take backs.
I love tabletop role playing, for the record. It's amazingly fun. And but I when I ran a game, I used it for all my own game notes. I just did each session like a chapter. And I kind of wrote about like where I was going and what I wanted to do, and what they were going to kind of encounter. And that was fun. It was a Shadowrun game, for the record. And Shadowrun is awesome. Shadowrun is the best. I love some cyberpunk. I really do. Let's see, what else have I used it for? I use it for really random things. Like, I'll sit down and I made I was actually making a plan of repairs we needed for our house. And I literally had, it was like a 3-stage thing where I had like repairs we're doing this year, repairs we're doing next year, so on and so forth. I use Scrivener just because I use it for everything. It's like my go-to.
Yeah.
And it worked perfectly well. I don't know if it was like I was using it appropriately, but it worked. So.
I think that's the best thing about it. There's no appropriate or inappropriate way to use it. If you want to use it as a project management tool for house repairs, I mean, more power to you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And well, we usually, my husband and I, when we're doing stuff together, we usually use Google Docs.
Yeah.
And which is great for just little sort of thing, but it's like, again, it's just a bucket you throw stuff into.
Yeah.
So everything's on one page, or you can make a file, but it's all still individual Word documents. Just the ability to just to be kind of infinitely granular in Scrivener, to have folders inside folders inside folders, and you just go down and down for as long as you need them to. I love it. It feels very intuitive and very natural to me, and I actually can't sing its praises enough.
Awesome. Okay, so let's transition a little bit, talk about the future of creative writing tools. As a professional writer, is there ever like a tool where you just think to yourself while you're writing, I really wish that this thing existed?
A better internet blocking tool.
A better
Freedom
internet blocking tool. Good point.
freedom is buggy as all get out, and the moment a person invents like a button I can just push to turn off all internet, and then I can't turn it back on until a set time period, they will get all my money, all of it.
So you
And
actually want it to prevent you from turning it back on.
yeah, well, that's what freedom does. You start it and you say, I want 5 hours of no internet, and bam, 5 hours of no internet. You have to restart your computer if you want that stuff back. And which is fantastic for me because
Yeah.
I can turn off the wireless, but it's so easy to just turn it right back on and go off and check something and never come back. Um, but I would love a program where I could just say turn the internet back on at 5 p.m., which Freedom can't do for some reason because it's awful. But it was the only thing I could find, so I paid $10 for it, and I feel very ripped off. But anyways, that's what I'd love. I know there are a lot of like word cloud programs out there that allow for brainstorming.
Yeah.
And I've never really been a writer like that. I think what I would really love to see as a creative writer is some sort of a tool for those of us who are more analytical, because a lot of people tend to think of writers, oh, they're so dreamy, oh, so creative, quirky.
Right.
And I am, I guess, creative and quirky, but I'm an analyzer. I love lists. I love spreadsheets. I love math. I love all this stuff. I find it very comforting to be able to see things organized. Some sort of an organizational program that allows me, a timeline program, a program where I can draw a timeline and just add events to it and have it automatically adjust so that I can see the events in my novel spaced relative distances apart and say, oh, wow, they're not doing anything for 8 hours. Maybe something should happen.
Right.
And I have to do all that by hand.
Yeah.
Right now, I draw it, actually, and I have a little grid graph paper, and I draw it out. When stuff is very complicated, I'll draw it if I just can't get my head around it. So something that would let me do that, any sort of timeline tool-making program would be amazing. Also, programs that let me more easily incorporate images into my work, because, for example, that's it. So, Scrivener, if Scrivener could add more features to help make books look really good when you export them to ebook, like better drop capitals and that kind of thing, the niceties of pre-published books.
Yeah.
Just a few things would be really great, like the ability to put in a 300 DPI image that's like small as your chapter header. Would be really, really awesome because, again, I've gotten into self-publishing, which I love because I am a very anal retentive person. You probably realize that I like to be in control of things. And one of the biggest frustrations for me in working with publishers is I can't control what they do.
Right.
If they give me a cover I don't like, I can yell at my agent on the phone all day and nothing will happen.
Wow. For the images as chapter titles, though, there is a way. It's kind of complicated, but you can use metadata to insert images as chapter titles, and you can even like code them, for example, so that each point of view has a unique symbol associated with them.
Wow.
I'll send you some links afterwards, but a gentleman named Garrett Robinson has a couple tutorials online about how to format using metadata to insert images into your book. So I'd highly recommend you check that out.
That sounds awesome. Again, things I would know if I was a more advanced Scrivener user than I currently am.
Totally.
But I pay for being very simple about it. But yeah, just sort of niceties like that, and ways to do it more easily.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely not the easy way right now. Like it's kind of a hack, But I think the other tools that you mentioned, like having a point and click timeline or like a build your own timeline app would be absolutely invaluable for so many professional writers.
So any programmers listening, if you want to make like a really quick build your own timeline app, like I'm down. You've got my money.
Yeah.
I am a buyer.
I second that. It's a great idea.
I also think that another thing that is going to be in the future of creative writing is going to be a program that lets you keep track of your sales more easily from if you're self-published. Because and I know a new site just launched, and I cannot for the life of me remember its name, which is
interesting. Yeah, that's a unique problem.
Basically lets you upload the spreadsheets you can get from Amazon.
Yeah.
And will help you track your sales. Because, like, for example, and this is so stupid, right now on Amazon, there's no way to say, hey, Amazon, how many books of X title have I sold in my lifetime?
Right.
I can see how many I sold per month, but not, like, total. And that's so stupid. I want to know. Yeah. I want to be able to put on the cover of my book, over 100,000 sold.
Right.
I have to do all the math myself. And at this point in my career, actually, my husband has quit his job and is now my kind of full-time, I call him my manager, because he, like, takes care of all the stuff I don't want to do.
That's awesome.
All the business stuff and all the accounting.
Yeah.
So much accounting.
Yeah.
Because you're getting money from, like, 50 different Amazons and publishers and other sales points and all this stuff. It's just coming in from everywhere, and someone has to keep track of all of that. Mm-hmm. So some sort of an author business management tool would be amazing, something that would take Amazon spreadsheets, because whether your dream is to be traditionally published or whether you're really into self-publishing is part of the publishing landscape now. And like, I'm a hybrid author, and I'm very happy being one. There's a lot of benefits to New York. There's a lot of benefits to self-publishing, and I like to be able to pick and choose.
Totally.
Based on what book I'm doing and where in my career I am. Mm-hmm. And I feel that a lot of authors, even if they don't think this way at the beginning of their publishing career, feel this way within several years. Like, I know, especially in the mid-list, which is where I am, which people who are not big bestsellers, but who still sell pretty well, who make a living off their work. A lot of people that I know in my own sphere are going to self-publishing, not really because of anything New York did. Mm-hmm. Like, there was no bad burn, there was no fallout, but just because that's where the money is. And you'd have to be stupid not to at least look, not to at least be interested and give it a try. Well, stupid is the wrong word. You'd have to be closed. You have to be closed-minded.
There you go. Yeah.
Closed-minded, because there are many very intelligent authors who are firmly anti-self-publishing, and I just cannot understand why.
Yeah.
I do not understand it. Why?
Maybe they don't want to do the accounting.
Why would you not want tons of money? Why would you not want this? Like, you're a fully established author. You could literally multiply your income by 4. Why not? What is the problem? Do you not like money?
Yeah, but that's an interesting idea, because a lot of these authors that were traditional and never had to deal with, like, business systems and accounting systems are coming to self-publishing and getting, way in over their heads, because they're not expecting to have to keep track of all this stuff.
And it's very, very different from New York, because in New York they do literally everything for you. Mm-hmm. You're treated like a precious little Fabergé egg.
Right.
And which includes sometimes making decisions for you, which is where I got. Which I did not like personally. Yeah. That's one of my things that really bothered me about New York, because it's and again, this isn't to say anything bad about my publisher or anything that happened there. I'm a person who likes to make the decision.
Yeah.
And even if I agree with how things came out at the end, like having someone make just a giant business decision on my behalf without consulting me, I got upset. I did not like that. And in self-publishing, every decision is your decision. But you can also change your decision. But again, it is a very different business environment. You have to do a lot more. You have to hire your own copy editors and artists. Right. You have to do all this stuff. And you have to deal with money coming in from these companies and deciding what your price should be. You have to look and say, am I making a profit? But all that kind of stuff. But you also have to, there's also a lot of other kind of elements to being a working author, like, for example, conventions. A lot of authors love conventions. They talk about conventions all the time. But for me, at least, the ROI in conventions, the return on investment, was abysmal. Mm-hmm. I would spend all this money, and I love them. They're fun. They're fun as all get out. But now I treat them as vacations. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to have fun. Yeah. And write it off my taxes as a business expense. Right. But, when it comes, and to make connections, professional connections, which are very important. But when it comes to actually selling books, conventions don't do anything. And, I didn't know that until I really sat down and looked at my numbers and all sorts of things.
Unless maybe it's 2K to 10K, because then it's about writing.
Then it is about writing. Then it is all about writing.
Fantastic. Well, this has been really great.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll tell you, the one exception to that convention story is I'm going to RT this year, which is Romantic Times, which is one of the biggest romance conventions ever, like in the world.
Where is that one?
It's in Dallas this year.
Oh,
I'm very excited. Okay. I've never been to Texas, so I'm very excited.
Cool.
And but yeah, I'm going to be on a panel with Ilona Andrews and Presley Cole, who are like two of my favorite authors ever. And I would pay a kidney to go to this convention, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So you've got that convention coming up, and you said you just finished a book, right? What else are you working on?
The second Heartstrikers novel, which is called One Good Dragon Deserves Another, is going to be hopefully out in the next few months. So I still have to send it to my beta readers and get it proofread. And I actually have to finish the edits, which I'm almost done with. Like, the book itself is finished, but it has to be fixed.
Right.
There's lots of stuff that has to be done. So I'm working on that. And but we're making very good progress. And I'm also hopefully going to be writing a sequel to 2K to 10K, which is going to be a much more kind of rounded book, and it's tentatively going to be titled "If You Don't Love It, You're Doing It Wrong."
Nice, I like
that.
And
it's going to be all about how to make writing less stressful and more intuitive and easier, because it should be easy and natural and fun.
Yeah.
And it should be the best thing you do all day. And that's sort of what the book is about. And it's going to have a whole bunch of like author tricks and working author stuff and how to manage tension and that sort of thing. So I'm hopefully going to have that out this year, and I'm going to be writing the third novel in my Heartstrikers series, also hopefully this year. And if I get all that done, which is big if, fingers crossed, I'm going to be starting a new series in my sci-fi universe, which is going to be about another mercenary who used to work with Debbie and is now running her own all-female Blackbird crash team, which is going to be awesome. It's going to be sort of this like a bunch of like a team on a run gone wrong, basically a job gone wrong, and it should be a lot of fun. I'm very excited about that one.
I love hearing how passionate you are about these stories. It's so much fun to hear.
Oh, think well, but if I don't love my books, God, who will?
Touche.
You have to be excited about your own stuff, or else why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother?
Absolutely. So where can people find you and your work online?
Oh, well, they can go to www.rachelaron.net, and that's RACHELAARON.net. And I have all my works under both of my pen names, Rachel Aron and Rachel Bach. Up there, they've got sample chapters. My blog is there. I've got a mailing list. You can sign up and get updates. It's got a link to my Twitter, which is probably where I am most active. And that's the place to find anything and everything me. And again, if you're interested in the 2K to 10K blog post, which is still up for free in its original format, and it is on my blog, which you can get to through rachelaron.net. Just click on the blog link. And over on the left-hand side, I have a whole bunch of links of all my best posts, and it talks about how I edit my books, how I plot my books, all the nitty-gritties of how I do my stuff. I just did a big series about writers and money.
Oh, nice.
You can tell, I think about money a lot, and it's about all the different ways writers get money and how to handle that money, and it's got tax questions and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So fantastic. I really take the business approach to writing. I also talk about my self-publishing numbers sometimes, so that's all in the blog.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks again for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I am always, always, always happy to talk to writers because, I mean, seriously, this is a very lonely job. If you don't talk to other writers, it's just you and your characters sometimes. Like, I mean, I work from home, my husband works from home, and I have a 5-year-old kid. There are, like, times when I do not talk to anyone who is not in my immediate family for, like, a week.
Yeah,
You've got to stay connected to other authors.
That's great. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.